Okay, take a look at this. Seems pretty simple, right? Just a bucket of water. But I have to make a little confession about what's actually inside.
Yeah, you heard that right. What's floating in this water is technically illegal in places like Florida and California. Seriously, if I lived there, having this could get me into some pretty hot water. And yet, here it is. And I'm gonna let you in on its secret.
Because what the government now calls a dangerous invasive weed was for 1,000 years one of the best-kept secrets of Asian empires. This isn't just some gardening tip. Oh no. This is a story of espionage, ancient wisdom, and a tiny little plant that holds the power to give you complete freedom from the entire fertilizer industry.
To really get it, we've got to go way back in time. Not to some high-tech lab, but to the rice paddies of 11th century Vietnam. For centuries, their harvests were the stuff of legend. They could feed whole civilizations, and they did it without a single bag of chemical fertilizer. So, how? The answer was literally floating right there at their feet.
The whole key was this tiny aquatic fern, so small it can fit right on the tip of your finger. It was this perfect, self-renewing system where the water itself grew the food for the crops.
They called it Azolla. Well, actually, they called it green gold. And when I say gold, I mean it. The villages that knew how to grow this stuff, they protected that knowledge with a ferocity that seems almost crazy today. I mean, folklore talks about severe punishments for anyone caught trying to steal even a tiny handful. And here's why it was so precious. It's the speed. It's just terrifyingly fast. Under the right conditions, Azolla doubles its mass every 3 days. A flooded field could go from clear to a thick green carpet in just a week, choking out every single weed while pumping tons of pure nitrogen straight into the water to feed the rice. It was one of the most efficient little biological machines on the entire planet.
For 1,000 years, this was the engine of Asia. But then, in a German lab, back in 1910, something happened that would completely change the course of history.
These two men, Fritz Haber and Karl Bosch, they figured out how to literally rip nitrogen out of thin air using insane amounts of pressure and heat. It was the birth of industrial chemical fertilizer. And suddenly, you didn't need to understand nature's cycles anymore. You just had to buy a bag.
And this created this fundamental shift in power. Before, the farmer was free, right? The fertilizer literally grew in their own field. Now, they were a customer. Nitrogen, the very air we all breathe, became just another commodity to be traded on the stock market. And the propaganda machine fired up. Governments send out agents preaching this new gospel. The old ways are dirty. The factory is progress. Azolla, this plant that was revered for centuries, was stripped of its status and slapped with a new label, weed. Just a nuisance that had to be eliminated.
But today, well, the cracks in that industrial system are really starting to show. And that is why we're looking at this bucket with a whole new perspective. So let's get to how you can build your very own perpetual fertilizer machine. And I'm going to start by telling you how I completely, miserably failed my first time.
So I got my hands on some Azolla, I tossed it in a bucket of tap water, and I waited. 3 days later, it was a dead, stinking, rotten soup. I had forgotten the single most important detail. See, Azolla doesn't work alone. It has a partner, this microscopic cyanobacteria called anabina that lives inside its leaves. That bacteria is what actually pulls the nitrogen from the air. My tap water had chlorine in it, and what does chlorine do? It kills bacteria. I had literally starved my Azolla to death.
So here it is, the fail-safe protocol. First, and this is non-negotiable, you have to use chlorine-free water. Just let your tap water sit out for a day, or even better, use rainwater. Second, add a little spoonful of soil or compost to the water. This gives it the starter minerals it needs, especially phosphorus. And third, add your Azolla and just put it in a spot with some light but not scorching hot sun.
If you do this right, I'm telling you, you will witness something that looks like science fiction. Once you have that thick green carpet, it's time to harvest. And the crucial rule here is the 50% rule. You only take half. Never, ever empty the bucket completely. Just scoop out half every few days. This just resets that explosive growth clock and it turns your bucket into a non-stop biomass printing machine.
So what do you do with it? Well, first, you can use it as an instant mulch. It's so high in protein that microbes just devoured it in days, releasing all that nitrogen right to your plant's roots. Second, you can supercharge your compost pile. Adding a layer of Azolla will spike the temperature, turning a slow pile into a hot, fast-decomposing engine. And third, you can make Azolla tea. Just let it rot in water for about a week, and you've got yourself a powerful liquid fertilizer.
But hold on. Before you run off and find some Azolla online, we need to have a really serious conversation. I told you I have a monster in this bucket, and I was not using that word lightly.
See, Azolla has no conscience. In a controlled environment like this, it's an absolute gift, but if it escapes into a wild river or a lake, it can be a biblical disaster. There are terrifying stories from Florida and Ontario where escaped Azolla formed a layer so thick it blocked out all the sunlight, killing every native plant, sucking up all the oxygen, and suffocating the entire ecosystem.
This kind of power comes with real responsibility. These are the sacred rules. You have to follow them. Rule 1. Always grow it in a completely isolated container. Rule 2. Keep it far, far away from any drains or streams. And Rule 4, and this is critical, if you ever need to get rid of it, never, ever throw it out alive. Let it dry completely in the sun until it's brown and crispy. Only then is it safe.
And just to give you a sense of the scale of power we are dealing with here, scientists have uncovered something they call the Azolla event. Get this, 49 million years ago, this very same plant grew so explosively in the Arctic Ocean that it sucked up massive amounts of CO2 from the atmosphere, cooling the entire planet and helping to trigger an ice age. That is the force we are playing with.
You know, at the end of the day, this is about so much more than just fertilizer. For a century, we've been taught to be passive consumers, that fertility comes from a factory. Growing Azolla is an act of rebellion. It's about taking back a 1,000-year-old piece of wisdom and saying, you know what? I don't need your factories. I can create my own abundance right here.
But that freedom, it comes with a price: eternal vigilance. So the next time you see a weed floating in a pond, ask yourself this: is it really trash, or is it simply a treasure we all forgot how to use? If you're going to do this, do it right. Be smart, be careful, and above all, be a guardian.